All right, welcome to Bonehead. This is
Hey, who the fuck uses a
wanna give-
teapot?
what?
British people.
I want to welcome you to Bonehead.
British people, and this is true. I don't
Who
know
was
if you know
you?
this.
I'm trying to get the vaccination. You guys keep talking. No,
but
keep going.
There's a lot of controversy over, like, if you microwave water to make tea, you're a terrible person, evidently.
Yeah, but you could use a pot. You know, I mean, like a literal pot. A teapot? Who the fuck uses a teapot?
Well, the problem is, and this is, I've had people explain this to me. And by the way, if this goes worldwide, I don't know if anybody watches.
The only reason you use a teapot is, I like to
I don't
hear the
think
whistle,
anything
so
goes
I know
worldwide.
the steam's ready.
But no, it saves water because you only lose so much money. Like, you can boil away a pan of water, but you only lose so much out of the thing. So it actually is a conservation.
Yeah. So
thing.
you proved my point. Teapots are useless now. We can move on with our conversation for today's show.
That's not true. And let me tell you another reason why teapots aren't useless. Mrs. Potts from Beauty and the Beast. Tell me,
expendable character.
What
does she do?
You
What does she
sass-mouth
do?
Angela Lansbury one more time, I will put this fist down your throat.
You
the
guys
coat
keep talking. I'm going to look up where Madisonville is.
The coat. It's 3 hours away.
Well, so much for that.
But you can just stay at home.
Corbin.
You can just stay at home and watch a Happy Madison movie.
It's more like 2.5 hours away, but that's okay. You time travel because they're in the central time zone, Joe.
That's true. That is true. I mean, you also go back to the 1950s in some ways, but I'm not going to go into that.
Let's get on to the topic of our show.
The topic. So the topic this week was a pain in my ass, and I wanted this topic, and it's
a pain in my ass too, by the way.
It was
I've had more fun with it than I ever thought I would. I honestly was dreading it.
Hold on now. Hold on. It's been written over here on this damn door for a month. Well, years.
It was one of the first ones we came up with.
And the reason why it's
that and Dracula, which I don't want to fucking do.
We've got.
Well, now I want to do it.
Oh, we did. Oh, yeah, we did do Dracula.
We did 2 parts on Dracula, didn't we?
I forgot.
Yeah, we did. We did 2 parts.
Don't you remember? You started yelling at me, going, "I never said I didn't want to do Dracula." Ha ha!
I wanted to talk.
Caught you.
I want to talk about Lady Bathroyd.
Caught you, Moscow, Mitch. I've never actually said that out loud.
Yeah,
never really. I've seen it when I'm driving downtown and they've got the signs up, and I was like, Moscow, Mitch, but I never said it out loud.
By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, never ever ride in a car with Joe. He drives like this, and that just don't seem safe.
And I want the steering wheel really high up.
He drives a school bus, evidently,
and he puts on a beehive. He puts on a beehive.
That's true. That's all true. Well, now let me
That's
tell you.
That's a visual gag for those of you listening. Yeah. You missed everything.
This is a true story. So I forgot where I was going to go with this. The reason why this is a pain in the ass is because one of them is obvious to anyone who's ever met me. And I thought I can't do that one. But every time I went back to the damn list, that's my number one.
Yeah.
So I've talked about this 100 times.
Oh, I figured this one would be your number one.
But several of them are so good. We've talked about them throughout this show. So the topic, gentlemen, and you all listening to us right now, is the best remakes. Movies that are remakes that are better than the original.
Yeah.
Now,
and I think
remakes that we like, but now these are better than the original.
And I don't know if James agrees with this, but Joe, I think me and you agree that there's one that actually should be put on a pedestal as it surpasses the original in all aspects.
The one I have it does.
Okay. Yeah.
The one I'm going to talk about. There's a couple actually.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And for most my list, honestly, that is true. But I think there's one that me and you hold on a higher regards that it's on a pedestal.
We'll talk about it.
You have a poster of it on your wall.
For you people who listen to us and have never seen The Basement, thank you for narrowing it down.
Okay, I'm going to jump to it, and then that can lead our discussion. I'm talking about The Thing.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. Yeah,
go for it.
Yeah.
So go ahead and lead us in.
John Carpenter's The Thing. There's 2 that I'm going to talk about, and the other one's directed by Philip.
Oh, we're not talking about that one from a few years ago. That Thing. Well, so I don't agree with this conversation at all.
I honestly thought you were going to burst out into That Thing by what musical women?
We're talking about the Swedish one where they did it with a Swedish camp. That's technically a prequel. That's the best movie ever made. How they screwed that idea up is beyond me, because that was the
You
smartest
know what?
thing
You know what made you
was a prequel.
what messed that movie up?
What?
Honestly,
Everything.
Not enough Wilford Brimley.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, honestly, watch the
And there's
thing
an American
and
in
actually
it for no
think.
good reason other than somebody needed to speak English.
Watch the thing and think. Oh my God, what would this be like without Wilford
Wilford
Brimley?
Brimley.
But James,
into this man.
So James, out of curiosity, before Joe goes into his conversation about it, is that one that I don't know how your feelings on it? I mean, that to me is on a pedestal of this is a remake that far surpasses the original in all aspects. Like there is no finer example of a remake being better than the original than The Thing, in my opinion. I don't know how you feel about that.
There's one maybe, and I'm going to talk about it later, so I don't want to give it away. There's
Okay.
one film that I think may be able to be held up, and what's funny is it wasn't remade just once, but the last version of it, the last remake of it, was held in such regard that I don't think anybody's really tried to mess with it since. So I would argue those are probably, if you were building a house of remakes, so to speak.
Yeah.
Your two pillars would be the film I'll talk about later and The Thing.
Okay.
I will agree with that. So, but I'll get to mine later.
Okay, Joe, go.
So John Carpenter was the it guy. I'm looking something up there real quick. John Carpenter was...
No, that was Tommy Lee Wallace.
Tommy Lee Jones is a good director in his own right. You know, Fright Night 2 is one of those unappreciated sequels. So back to what I was saying. John Carpenter was the it guy in the early 80s in Hollywood. And he'd made independent cinema, worked for TV a little bit, did a couple of pictures, The Fog and Escape from New York for Avco Embassy, which technically are smaller studios. They were considered low budget independent places. The Thing was going to be his first major motion picture from one of the big studios. Now, John Carpenter's The Thing is better than the original The Thing, directed by Nyby, which actually wasn't really directed by Nyby. It was directed by Howard Hawks for the most part. It's based on the novella Who Goes There. And that's what I was looking up, is I couldn't remember John W. blah, blah, blah's name. So that was, I forgot John W. Campbell, although I've read the novella. Now, the reason why John Carpenter's version is better than the original, let me go through each one of the reasons for me. Number one, he went back to the source material, and where the original 50s version, The Thing is played by James Arness. It's a fantastic movie with a great middle of the movie kind of surprise when they're opening the door. You don't see it coming with the thing coming through the door. In the 50s, it had to shock the hell out of everybody. Right. But they changed it around. What Carpenter did, it's a plant who can, if you cut off its arm, it can basically grow it back, right, gentlemen?
Yeah.
Right.
And doesn't he kind of look like I'm blank? I've seen the movie.
He's got a bald cap and tall.
I was gonna say I thought he kind of looked like a giant carrot.
It may have in the original. I don't think he looks like a carrot.
Okay.
So it's a classic film unto itself. Still extremely watchable.
Yeah,
really watchable. I'm going to talk about another movie that was made in the 50s that has a fantastic remake too, that the first one's still extremely watchable. But it's not really a great service to the original story Who Goes There. Carpenter's is. Carpenter's even took names out of the stories like Niles and McCready. Those names are in that story if you read the novella. And basically the thing is from another world. They go out, they dig this thing up, and it can be anybody it can imitate. And if you've never seen John Carpenter's The Thing, but you're a big Tarantino fan and you've seen The Hateful Eight, that's that is Tarantino playing homage to Carpenter.
Absolutely.
Chad and I watched this and was like, shit. Everybody's talking about this as a Western. This is a Carpenter film. The music, he even had Ennio Morricone do the music for The Hateful Eight. By the way, the only music that Carpenter didn't do for one of his movies was that one, and it's Ennio Morricone. But Ennio Morricone later on said he just took the shit that sounded like his anyway. I wrote a lot more of the score, and he didn't use any of it, which I thought was a great quote. He just took the shit that sounded like his stuff anyway. That's one. He went back to the source material. He didn't do a straight remake. He did an interpretation of the original novella. Two,
Right.
that fucking cast.
Yeah.
It's
You
all
can't beat that
male.
cast.
It's all male, which is
Yeah.
odd if you think about it. Even then, it's odd. It's all male. And
Yeah.
when they were shooting in British Columbia, it was an all, for the most part, all male entourage. And it wasn't until that there were actually a lot of women working on the picture till they got back to Universal to do the refrigerated scenes where they would make it cold in the room, and everybody ended up getting the flu that summer working at Universal because they'd walk out and it'd be 80 or 90 degrees, and the rooms had to be refrigerated so you could see their breath. And that's two. That cast nailed it. Number three, Rob Bottin. Those special effects, 70% of them, not all of them, the ending could have used CGI. It's stop motion where the creature finally comes out.
Yeah.
That stop motion does not hold up. Neither does one other little shot. But for the most part, 70 to 80% of that shit looks just as good as the day it did when it came out in the summer of 82 and made everybody puke.
Right. And honestly, that's one of the things that I really don't like the the prequel, whatever you want to call that piece of shit. But the big problem is one of the biggest problem with the prequel was they relied too heavily on CGI on that one.
They went the complete opposite. So in an interview with Carpenter, he has been asked about it. And he said, well, CGI is a tool like anything else. He said, no, CGI would not have improved Rob Bottin a lot of what is said. But I agree with him. He actually said himself, I could have used CGI for the end of that movie. It would have helped me. Yeah, I could have built that big monster at the end of it, but when it comes out of the floor and goes together, CGI would have helped me get there, and I didn't have it, and that movie could have used it then. So I thought it was very gracious of him to admit that because it's true. And really, the last point I want to talk about is it's written by, oh God, I can't remember his name. Oh my God. Kirk Douglas did a ton of Burt Lancaster, Burt Lancaster's son. Bill Lancaster was a screenwriter in his own credit. What he's really famous for in one of his greatest movies is something called The Bad News Bears. So he wrote The Bad News Bears, and this is one of his films that he wrote later. That's a really cracking screenplay. It's Carpenter's best movie, in my opinion. But I'm going to knock it on two things. I'm not really, well, shouldn't say knock it. So Carpenter's one of my three favorite directors any day for 40 years. However, is he the greatest director of all time? Hell no. Is he the greatest director of the 80s? Probably not. But he's up there, and I'll tell you why. Because I still see his shit in pop culture still. I look around, and They Live is around me still. You guys agree? Mm-hmm. Big Trouble in Little China is still probably more popular now than it ever has been. Halloween has never stopped.
James, watch this. You know what's not around you right now?
What?
The Fog.
The Fog is not. I'm not a big fan of The Fog.
I'm not. I saw The Fog for the first time 2 weeks ago.
It's got some good scenes in it.
I finally watched your copy of it. No, there's some good scenes of it. And Adrian Barbeau.
Barbeau's good, and the whole opening with John Houseman.
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, honestly, that movie, woof.
And that's a recut. He went back and reshot scenes to make it better.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's not the greatest filmmaker, and The Thing is not the greatest movie of all time. It's flawed. There's a couple of places where it doesn't quite gel. There's a couple where there's a few jumps that I think that they could have made more seamless. But it's probably his best film, and it's one of my favorite movies. And every year, it becomes more and more. What's the word I'm looking for, James, in our pop culture around us of people not trusting people?
Relevant.
Yeah.
It's more and more relevant all the time. And Tarantino took what I think is the theme of it and made The Hateful Eight.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But yeah, no, I really do love The Thing. And when you said this is the one you want to do, I'm like, that was number one on the list. I really do think that's the there is no other example of a remake surpassing the original. And one thing I liked about it more than anything, like I said, the original, you see the alien.
Yeah,
you do. And I kind of like The Thing because the Thing doesn't have a true form.
It can be anything.
It can be anything. And even at the last part, it's a bunch of pieces coming together. It's not the actual alien itself.
And other movies have tried to copy that idea, like Leviathan.
Leviathan.
And as much as I like Leviathan,
I like Leviathan too, but
that monster is shit.
It
did not have Rob Bottin in his early 20s, high on every kind of drug there was, working 20-some hours a day. I'll tell you guys a quick story. Rob Bottin got so sick, he worked so long and so many hours that he ended up in, as my boss would say, in hospital. He ended up in the hospital because he got so sick. In fact, he tells the story that Carpenter looked at him and goes, "Are you okay? Yeah. You don't look good. You really should go to the hospital." And he was in the hospital for, I think, a week.
Yeah.
That's how sick he got for that much hours, that many times. It was crazy. And the problem is it came out 2 weeks before E.T. in the summer of 82, and nobody was ready for it. And to this day, Carpenter appreciates that fandom finally found it, and it has. Boy, has it found it. It is more popular now than ever. It just keeps, to me, increasing popularity every time I go to a convention. But he doesn't mind that critics shit on it at the time. What bothered him and hurt him and killed him. And by the way, he lost a job. The next movie was going to be Firestarter, which I would have loved to have seen Carpenter do Firestarter with a big budget, because the Firestarter we got sucked. Couldn't have been any worse than that. The thing that killed him was that the fans attacked him in the summer of 82.
Yeah, I just don't understand.
Not happy with it.
I just
don't.
One
of the few people I know that is that George Romero called him up and said, "Don't listen to them. They're fucking idiots. This is a fantastic movie."
I mean, 2-year-old me would have been going like,
yeah, I think the sensibilities are just so it's just such a different movie.
God damn Reagan.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Such a different movie than the original, which is the reason why it works.
Yeah. James, do you mind if
what's your greatest? Well, hold on. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go. James can go.
Well, I was kind of, James says there's one other that he feels, and I didn't know.
I have to give it credit because, and I'm going old school, so you'll have to forgive me, but I want to give a little bit of backstory because I think this is a tragic story of the creator of this and why this probably needs some attention. So I've got to start.
No, Romeo and Juliet is not better than Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. You son of a bitch.
No. But no, Sherlock Gnomes is. Anyway,
I've never seen Sherlock Gnomes.
No, I've got to talk a little bit about, and you all may guess where I'm going with this from the very beginning, but I want to start with the author.
The Mummy. I'm just going to keep going.
Who created these characters? That's fine.
The Mummy is on one of the lists, by the way.
See how long
if you guys look at some of these lists, it is on some of the lists. Collider has it as number 3.
Ugh.
I've got to start with the author who created these characters because I think the more I think about him and the more I want to find out more about his life because he's a fascinating human being. I'm talking about Dashiell Hammett, also an Americanized to Dashiell Hammett. Dashiell Hammett is probably one of the most important figures in what became popular culture of the early 20th century into the middle 20th century. And the reason you'll understand why I'm saying this in a little bit, but he unfortunately at one point flirted with it. He was an extremely liberal guy. He was from Maryland, and he at one point in the 1930s became interested in communism and all of that stuff. And he started to think about. He set up a bail fund at one point, and I'm jumping around his timeline a little bit, but he is one of the most important figures in 20th century literature that most people, if you walk up the street, who's Dash Hammett to most people, they're going to go, ooh. But they may know some of his characters. Nick and Nora Charles, The Continental Op, Secret Agent X9, and most importantly for what I want to talk about, Sam Spade.
Sam Spade, yeah.
Sam Spade. So the Maltese Falcon is where most people think about Sam Spade. Sam Spade, he wrote several Sam Spade stories. Oddly enough, his last novel came out in 1934. And once again, that goes to some politics. He wrote short stories after that. But his career as an author, his major productivity ended in 1951. He did not die until 10 years later at 66. But what could have happened to him in the 1950s that would have ended his career? I wonder. But that being said,
damn Tommy.
The Maltese Falcon, Sam Spade. Well, the Maltese Falcon everybody knows and loves is not the original Maltese
No.
Falcon. It was made twice before we got the version that everybody loves.
Right.
The original one was 1931, and it was directed by Roy Del Ruth, who also directed the Ziegfeld Follies, if you want to do some film history. And it happened on Fifth Avenue. It starred Ricardo Cortez as Sam Spade and B.B. Daniels as Ruth Wonder. And it followed generally the same plot of the one that would come literally not that much later. But the one that I'm fascinated by is that when Warner Brothers went, well, that did okay. It wasn't, I mean, nobody ever says, the 1931 superior to the Bogey one. Nobody says that. But I didn't realize Warner Brothers went, well, that did okay. Let's cash in on this again 5 years later. And they did so, and it's actually a part of film history that I want to talk about. So they realized, and this is, let me just quote an article that talked about this. They filmed a 1936 version because, quote, economical Warner Brothers executives decided to film another version of the book and assigned contract writer Brown Holmes to the screenplay. He changed names in The Object of Desire from a falcon to a ram's horn. It was directed by William Dieterle, who had directed Faust and Love Letters and all that stuff, and starred Betty Davis, and Warren William. However, it's important to note this because this is one of the movies that caused Betty Davis to say, screw you, Warner Brothers. She wouldn't show up to film it. She said it was regurgitated nonsense, that it was a trash film, that it did not even have the charm of the original one. So she didn't show up. She said, I'd just done The Petrified Forest, which was art, and then you assigned me this. And so she didn't show up. She got suspended after the third day of not showing up. And at this point, she was taking care of her mother and also trying to help her sister. I don't know the full details of Betty Davis's life. I'm not a Betty Davis expert. So she agreed to come back. The studio released it under the title Satan Met a Lady, because if you read Hammett's original thing, at one point Sam Spade is referred to as a blonde Satan, which is not, by the way he was cast ever. But so that movie was released, and it's interesting to me that we got the good version of the Maltese Falcon, because let me just read a quick review. The New York Times called it a cynical farce of elaborated and sustained cheapness. This was Bosley Crowther. A classic of dullness. And finally, he said, without taking sides in a controversy of such titanic proportions, it is no more than gallantry to observe that if Betty Davis had not effectually espoused her own cause against the Warners by quitting her job, the federal government eventually would have had to step in and do something about her. After viewing Satan Met a Lady, all thinking people must acknowledge that a Betty Davis reclamation project to prevent the waste of this gifted lady's talents would not be a too drastic addition to our various programs for the conservation of natural resources. Variety was a little bit kinder, saying it's an inferior remake of 1931's Maltese Falcon. Now, obviously, what's the superior version? It's the Maltese Falcon with Humphrey Bogart. There's no debate about that.
Yo, in a note.
But the fact that we legitimately, and I had to bring up Dash Hammett because if we mentioned the Thin Man before,
Yep,
he is so responsible for that detective and the hard-boiled, but also the clever detective. He is probably in his own right the closest America has ever got to a Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and nobody's remembering him, largely because of the smear campaign of the 1940s and 50s against him. So I wanted to bring him up a little bit, but the Maltese Falcon is probably, I will hold it up saying that movie got made twice in very close time. At least a thing, there was some space there to explore. Time had passed. The Maltese Falcon, not that much time passed between three different versions of it. But once you got Bogey in that role, nobody could do it the same way he did. So I hold up the Maltese Falcon as one of the most effective remakes done by the same studio, everything else.
Yep.
But you get a great director in there, and a director, if I'm not mistaken, an early work of his, right?
It's his first movie.
Yeah,
it was John Huston's first film.
Yeah, it's his first.
And matter of
And he
fact,
took, and if I'm not mistaken, he took it just as a foot into the door, right? He didn't have any.
I'm assuming, yeah. Orson Welles said no one was a better actor of playing director than John Huston.
well, and I was gonna say,
And he did that wearing a fake nose.
But if you could hear him tell the stories of Houston going, oh, and he does the impersonation, all right. It's just the way he would do it. Then go off and do something else, and then come back when the shot was set up. No one played the character of director better in his estimation than John Huston, because the director was the most useless person on the set.
And by the way, to the credit of John Huston, Bogart wasn't who the studio wanted either, and the person they wanted wouldn't show up. Said, "No, I'm not going to work with a first-time director." And I'm blanking on that actor's name, but he is famous in classic cinema because everything that won an Oscar he turned down.
Yep.
But real quick, the other thing about this, and it echoes Betty Davis's argument, Warner Brothers was known for being so cheap during this time that if you watch any of the special...
Warner Brothers being cheap? No.
If you look at any of the documentaries about the making of the Maltese Falcon, you'll find such trivia as Humphrey Bogart actually wore his own clothes. Those were his clothes because Warner Brothers would not spring for a wardrobe. So, Maltese Falcon, though, is a classic film. It's just not the first time that story was made. But the 1941 Maltese Falcon is a great remake.
Yep. Chad.
All right. So you did your two favorites. I'm going to do my favorite for this list. I have three that was, but when we said we were going to do this is the first one that popped in my head because it's, in my opinion, it far surpassed, other than The Thing, of course, but this is the other one that far surpasses the original. So in 1969, Henry Hathaway got with John Wayne, Glenn Campbell, Kim Darby, Jeremy Slate, Robert Duvall, and Dennis Hopper and made True Grit. And then in 2010, the Coen brothers blew their asses out of the water with their version.
Because they went back and did what?
They went, and I was going to say, just like John Carpenter, they went back to the source material and did True Grit. And it shows because, and honestly, when I saw this for the first time, a lot of that dialogue, I was like, oh, that's typical Coen brothers. No, that's straight out of the damn source material.
Right out of the book.
They took it right out of the book. Yeah. And they just put their own artsy spin on it. I didn't realize that this was their highest earning movie of all time.
I didn't know it was the highest one, but I know it was a big hit for them.
Yeah, it made the most. It's the Coen brothers film that made the most money.
Yeah. The thing about True Grit is that I didn't see the original one till later on. For some odd reason, that was one of the John Wayne movies I didn't see it
till later on either. And
then I watched it and I liked it quite a bit. And they do keep some of the dialogue from the book.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what somebody calls it. It's really funny. It's like Shakespearean Western or something like that.
Yeah.
But they keep some of the dialogue in the book, but Wayne is the only one who doesn't talk like the rest of them. Right. And I'm sure Glenn Campbell even says some of that shit, and none of the rest of them say it.
Yeah, but I think that's honestly, I think if I remember right, that had a lot to do with John Wayne being John Wayne.
I'm sure it is, but it is one of the better John Wayne performances. And James and I have said corn dodger to one another quite a few times. Yeah. He got up and left a few minutes ago during Chad speaking.
Yeah,
I wanted a Diet Coke too, but I didn't want to get up during.
I listened to that long diatribe to build up to the Maltese Falcon.
I know.
But I didn't even. There was like a 5-second intro before I went into True Grit. James took what, 5 minutes?
He took 26 minutes to talk about Harvard Bill.
Thanks, James.
Listen. The writer deserves credit. And honestly, something people go back and read his works.
And the same for Charles Portis, the original writer of True Grit. So this is a really short story that the Coen brothers took and spinned it into a masterpiece, in my opinion. It's one of those that I was writing for today's show and I really want to go back and watch it. I'm going to go back and watch it tomorrow probably. What?
So it has a flaw.
What's the flaw?
And it's not a flaw. All right. I can't use the word flaw, but this is funny because we were talking about endings before the show started. There's not kind of in what you would expect in a lot of cinema of some sort of catharsis at the end. In that, and I doubt that there was one in the book. It's probably the same ending that's straight out of the book.
Right. I didn't look that up, but yeah, I know what you're getting at. Yeah.
Yeah, the John Wayne movie has a little bit of that. I like the fact that she loses her arm or her hand. I can't remember.
Her arm. She loses her own arm.
Loses an arm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that it's missing, but if you've ever seen a Coen Brothers film, we knew we weren't going to get that anyway.
Right.
So I removed the word flaw. That's like you get to this and you kind of want a little bit of a release. I don't know that there's kind of a release of them kind of.
Yeah, I get that.
Even if there could just be a nod at one another at the end or something, it doesn't kind of have that.
I get that, but honestly, the movie was so artistically and well told that ending didn't bother me. I'm just like, oh, because I felt like there was no other way to end it, honestly. And if you haven't seen it, we're not going to ruin the ending. Go check it out. But
clearly, she doesn't make it out with all of her opinions.
It does. Directed by the Coen brothers. It stars Jeff Bridges, Haley Steinfeld, which I didn't realize this was her first role, and she was out of 15,000 applicants. She actually got the role out of that many.
Yeah.
Matt Damon, Josh Brolin. The list goes on. And
now, is this Josh Brolin before Jonah Hex? Tee-hee.
Oh, God,
it's Josh Brolin post Old Country for Old Men.
And post Goonies.
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 So I didn't know Jeff Bridges didn't want to take the role for this. So he was all about doing a Western with Coen Brothers because he wanted to do a Western with them. But then he told them we're going to do True Grit. He didn't want to do it at first because he didn't want to compete with Wayne's Legend.
Who could blame him, Chad?
Yeah, I couldn't blame him.
That's the one where they gave Wayne the Oscar.
Right.
Which is not the movie he earned the Oscar for.
No, but hey, don't make me throw a corn dodger at you.
Oh, no. Why do they call them corn dodgers? Because they have to dodge all the corn whiskey in my stomach.
Yeah, no, no, but it is a good performance. We were just talking about why you were getting a beverage.
No, I was not getting a beverage. I have a beverage. I got. See, I'm good. I came prepared.
When you were doing a bump of Coke,
yeah, we were drinking them warm.
Yeah, we were talking about.
Listen, I don't.
The language that they use, and everyone, even in the original 70s, that came out in the 70s, guys?
1969.
69. Everybody using that language except the Duke.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, it is one of those. It's one of the rare movies that the sequel I do hold up. And it's because of Katharine Hepburn. Rooster Cogburn and the Lady. It's a lot of fun, but it's all because Katharine Hepburn gets the best of John Wayne, and it's one of the only movies where that happens to him. In wordplay and everything else.
Yeah.
But, the Coen brothers told Jeff, and they told Jeff Bridges, just don't worry about that. Don't even watch True Grit. Read the story. And what I like about this, too, is the fact that they even went as far as to put the eye patch on the correct eye. Because it's on the wrong eye in the original True Grit.
From the guy from his so it specifically tells which eye in the book.
Yeah, it specifically tells what eye it is in the book, and it's John Wayne put it on the wrong eye for probably John Wayne reasons. In the iconic climax of the original movie, you see Rooster charge into the meadows with guns blazing, with the reins in his teeth.
Feel your hands.
Yeah, the funny thing about this is another reason why I love this quote. I'm building up to a quote from the Coen brothers. John Wayne was on the back of a truck when they shot that scene. Jeff Bridges actually did that on horseback.
Yep.
And they are roughly the same age when they shot that movie. I think Bridges was 1 year younger. I think Wayne was 61 and Bridges was 60. And to quote,
really? Wasn't Wayne a little older? He didn't die
might be
70, right?
They were really close, and Wayne might have been just a few years older.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm trying.
No, you can argue with me because I don't have that note written down. I forgot the ages.
I think he died in 76, 77.
But Ethan Coen, in an interview with the Hollywood Reporter, said our rooster could take their rooster.
Well, yeah,
yeah.
Because Jeff Bridges is an American.
Jeff Bridges is
an American treasure.
And the other thing I like,
62, Chad.
And Bridges was 60, right? Look me up on that one.
Yeah, I think so.
And per the Coen brothers, the best part about in terms of directing Jeff Bridges, all Jeff Bridges required per every scene was, okay, how much had Rooster been smoking and drinking at this scene? So
What was
That's
he
the only
talking about?
direction-
Cigarettes or actually marijuana? I wonder.
who knows?
You know what?
That was his specific question on every scene. Is he going to, okay, how much smoking and drinking had he done prior to this scene? Okay, I'm ready. Yeah.
By the way, I want to say
That's
for
a
the record,
professional, by the way.
Yes.
Carpenter talks about that reason loves Kurt Russell, because Kurt Russell will show up, ask a question, hit his mark, say his line.
Yeah. Now, by the way, I want to say, so my father was a huge John Wayne fan. And I asked him, I'm like, hey, did you see the new version of True Grit when it came out for home video? Because my father didn't believe in movie places, theater. He didn't think they existed. I pointed them out to him, and he'd go, "No, that's not real." Anyway, no. He said, "Yeah, I watched it. It's not as good as John Wayne's." And I said, "Really, Dad? I mean, I know you're a big John Wayne fan. That kind of shocks me." And he said, "Well, it doesn't end as happy." And I was like, "No, I got nothing there. There's no response I have to that." And he goes, "And it's not quotable." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, there's not a lot of, bravado or whatever." And I was like, I guess not.
Oh, the scene with Bear Man is iconic.
Yeah.
But there's
Chad's
not a lot of
sitting here going, man, it's right over there on the shelf.
I know, man. I was coming up with the script for today's show, and I'm like, I gotta watch this. I was going to watch it before today, and I just never had a chance to. I'm dying to watch it again.
Well, now I want to watch both of them. Is what I was going to say. Is because I'm sitting here going, because now I've got quotes from the John Wayne version in my head, such as "bold talk for a one-eyed fat man," and I remember lines from the other one too, and now I want to watch them both. So thanks, Chad, for ruining Easter.
You're well, Joe. What's your second pick, bud?
Well, so I'm going to switch it up here.
And of course,
he's going to talk about Bad News Bears.
No, I can't get behind. I can't abide that. But I am going to do something a little different. It wasn't even on my list. I didn't think about it until I saw it because I often go through these lists before we do it, just because I'm just curious. And a lot of these are horseshit. Like, I couldn't imagine that The Mummy was on anybody's list of a better remake, but by God, it was there. And a couple of them in The Thing. By the way, Chad, if it makes you feel any better, The Thing dominates almost all those lists.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it does. But this one, no one's going to see coming. So this one's a Disney movie, and it's called Homeward Bound: The Incredible Journey.
Oh my God.
Now.
Okay, Don Amici. Yeah.
Yep.
Can't go wrong with Don Amici.
Michael J. Fox.
And Sally Field.
Mm-hmm. I saw this movie in the theater with my mom in '93 and cried my little eyes out.
I did not know it was a remake until this year, guys.
It is a remake directed by Fletcher Markle, and it was narrated by Rex Allen. Rex Allen narrated a ton of Disney things. It's kind of the same story, a dog, a cat, only it's a bull terrier, a Labrador retriever, and a Siamese cat. There's a Siamese cat in the other one. Begin missing their owners after being dropped off at a summer with a friend of the family who live across country from them, and their loneliness becomes, and they go look after them. Now, that's not what happens in the remake. In the remake, they get lost, right? And they have to make their way back to their owners. And it's directed by Dwayne Durham, whom I don't know at all. But it is a far superior film. A lot of people, if you've never seen the original, I'm pretty sure it's on Disney Plus. It's fun, but it is a far superior film to the original, and no one saw this coming.
I
started giggling because we talked about remakes.
Yeah,
and the truth is, it's not a bad movie. It's a great family movie. I loved it when I was a young man. I have seen it. I haven't actually seen it in a few years. I saw scenes from it. It's still.
I saw it about 3 months ago, and my daughters loved it. And
Did you hate it?
No, I didn't hate it. No, I loved it. Your story's a little wrong though. What happens is the family moves.
Yeah, they get lost when they move.
No, they move and they leave the pets behind, and then they try to go find them.
The pets leave them behind on purpose.
Yeah, because they're moving to a city.
Oh, I don't remember them leaving them behind on the purpose. Shit, Chad, I haven't watched it in a long time.
Yeah. And I knew this before. That is where I learned the most excellent line of cats rule and dogs drool.
Yes, by Terry Field. Here, I'll tell you a little bit of that. Was actually not the original cast. I can't remember who all actually did the voice recording, but Michael J. Fox had he replaced the one and only John Cryer.
Oh God.
John Cryer and someone else had actually.
You know what would make that even better?
What?
If it was Eric Stoltz who originally did
Wouldn't
it?
it? Wouldn't it? That would be great. I read an interview with John Cryer later on going, I had a cold. I don't blame them for replacing me. A direct quote. I had a cold. I don't blame them for replacing me. So I actually liked Homeward Bound, and it's a far superior film to the original. And I swear to God, I was looking through some of these, and I was like, well, everybody's going to know I'm going to do this. Everyone's going to do that. It is a superior remake for you Homeward Bound people out there. The Incredible Journey.
Yep.
That
well
darn
played.
cat. Go see the original, not the remake. That remake with Christina Ricci is barely watchable.
Well played. James, what do you got?
I'm going to go with one a little bit more recent. So I went way old school for this one. Let's go a little bit more recent. And I'm going to talk about a film. The original came out in 1987. And I'll be honest, I was not aware this was a remake until at some weird hour of the morning, I chanced upon the original and went, well, huh? And so I want to start with the cast here. Let me find my notes here. Here we go. So the original cast of the original, evidently Chad's having some sort of episode. I'll just, for those of you not watching.
He's okay. He'll just walk it off, buddy.
Again, based on a novel, this time written by A.J. Quinnell. This movie stars, and I want to read the cast because I was like, man, when I saw it to watch, I was like, this is a great cast. I can't believe this movie was a remake and this was the original cast. Starring Scott Glenn, for those of you that like the Daredevil Netflix series, guy that trained Daredevil.
Bitches.
Jade Mal, Joe Pesci, Brooke Adams, Jonathan Pryce, and Danny Aiello. And so
I put on pants just so you know.
Why now? Now's the time to take them off.
Because I'm cold.
So this is based on, again, a novel by A.J. Quinnell. And here's the plot to this movie with that cast. It turns out that there's the character played by Scott Glenn is a washed up veteran, Vietnam era veteran, but he's got all the special forces training, and he is hired by this family who convinces him to be the protection for their daughter. And he ends up forming a tight relationship with the daughter when, guess what? The daughter is taken. The movie is called Man on Fire.
I didn't know that's a remake?
I didn't know that was a remake.
1987, A.J. Quinnell's novel. By the way, A.J. Quinnell has since passed away, but I didn't realize his books are huge in different parts of the world because a lot of people view the character of Creasy, who is played in the original by Scott Glenn,
and Denzel in the remake.
And by the way, his friend is Joe Pesci in the original and is Christopher Walken in the remake.
Mm-hmm. Man. No idea.
It is a fascinating film. It hits all the same beats. The problem is, and it's not actually Scott Glenn's fault. I mean, Denzel's a phenomenal actor, but it's directed.
Also, it had Tony Scott.
I was about to say Tony.
Well, I was about to say, and that's the funny part. This is directed by, and I believe he's Italian. I'm sorry, I'm going to slaughter this name. Eli Chiracakai. I don't know. I apologize now because I'm sure I'm wrong.
What else?
But here's the funny part about that. Do you know who was originally going to direct? Tony Scott.
Tony
Scott
that makes sense.
Was assigned to direct, but then the studio in 1987 got scared. They wanted a hit, and they felt he did not have enough accomplishments to take on a movie.
He directed Top Gun.
Yeah, wasn't Top Gun out by that time?
Yeah.
I'm telling you. Well, here's what happened then. One of the producers, Arnon Machon, said, "Okay, I know
Brendan
who I
Melcher,
want."
I think is how you say it, but go
Oh,
on.
I'm sorry. I know who I want. I want it to be directed by Sergio Leone. And if we get Sergio Leone, we're going to get Robert De Niro. Tony Scott was still circling the project saying, no, 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 I can do this. I can do this. And I want to get either Marlon Brando, and remember this is 1987, or Robert Duvall
Yeah.
to be Creasy, because that would have been Vietnam era. They would have been the right age. They would have been, and they pass on Tony Scott. They tell him basically go away, and they let again, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing L.A. Chorokwa. And if you look this guy up, he is from France. He's a conehead. No, he has only directed about maybe 12 movies. The most recent one is The Origin of Violence. They've all been, other than this one, I believe they've all been international films. And he's done some musical theater, and that's what he's done. So obviously Tony Scott went on to do some other stuff. So what happens? It is not a hit. It doesn't get good reviews. A lot of people actually say Scott Glenn is misused in it. They actually don't blame him for it. They say Scott Glenn wasn't given anything to work with. The direction is choppy. It is not a hit, obviously. What happens? Well, Tony Scott goes on to make some more movies that make money. And it circles back, and we get Tony Scott's version, which of course has Denzel Washington, Dakota Fanning as the little girl Lupita, Rhoda Mitchell as the mother, Christopher Walken as his friend, Mark Anthony as the father, and then Mickey Rourke is in it as well. It's got a great cast, but so did the original. Jonathan Pryce is in the original. It's got a great cast. But the direction, evidently, from all reviews, and I watched it late at night, and I was like, man, this just isn't as fun. I mean, it's not even as dramatic. It's jumpy. So if you're really interested, check out 1987's Man on Fire. You'll be like, yep, it hit the same beat. It just doesn't hit it as well. The remake of Man on Fire, which I have a copy of right here, is better. And it has some of my favorite lines in it because Christopher Walken just has, he's painting his masterpiece.
Yes.
Joe Pesci is a great actor, and he does great as his friend. It's just not as good of a movie. Man on Fire is one I had to mention because once I saw the original, I was like, oh man, the remake is 10 times better.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Chad.
Okay, so guys, this is going to be a cheat on me because
I've
just
been
like
doing
your
it for
wife?
years.
no, this is one of these remakes that was so good.
Does he know I've been doing it with his wife? That's what a double-edged
She does
is, right?
constantly walk around with a face of disappointment. So that makes sense.
Listen, it takes two to give her that face.
I was to say now, in all fairness,
Two.
that
You can't get that level of disappointment with just one fat fuck.
let me
to help you.
let me borrow a Jimmy Carr comeback here real quick. Now, in all fairness, Chad, that may not be from Joe. There were a lot of guys there.
There was a lot of guys.
Touche, sir. No,
sorry, person who will never actually watch this, I'm sure.
No, so this movie was so good that I actually did not go and ever watch the original because I don't want to, because this movie, it was so great. It came out the same year as True Grit, which I'm like, oh man, I need to pick more remakes over the course of time. But when I was thinking of movies, this is one that came up. 13 Assassins. In 1963, it was directed by Ichi Kudo. And then
I've
the
never
2000
seen the original. I didn't even know it was a remake. It's Takashi Miyake.
I always say Takashi Mike, but I know that's not right.
I think it's Miyake or something like. It's his best movie.
It's Takashi Miike's best movie, bar none. And if you haven't seen it, it's basically there's a villainous feudal lord who's just a despicable person, and these people hire these 13 assassins to kill him.
Yep.
Basic plot. Beautifully told. And I didn't
get the line in it. He goes like, right? It's like, I'll do it beautifully or something like that.
Yeah, something like, I can't remember.
Okay.
Me and Joe actually watched this together, and I think we were both floored when we watched it.
Loved it. Yeah. And other people, I've had people there's a friend of mine named Chris. I won't say his whole name. He's like shit on it, and I was like, "Are you? Did we watch the same movie?"
Yeah, how can you shit on 13
I have had more than
Assassins?
one or two people do that. Well, back in the day, no one talks about it now.
Yeah, and
That's a good
that's one of
obscure one.
this is just one of the saddest part, and it should still be talked about. It is amazing film. Um,
Oh, many Japanese films that have been ripped off,
yeah, and
remade.
so I didn't realize this. The opening sequence, and this is another reason why I don't need to see the original. The opening sequence, and this is the only case where this happens in the movie. It's a shot for shot repeat of the original.
Mm-hmm.
The opening sequence is so, but other than that, the rest of it is Takashi Miike's. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong.
I think it's Miyake, but you can check on that, Chad.
Yeah. What I love about
Japanese
this
ain't quite as good as my Chinese, and they ain't quite as good as my English.
Yeah.
And
what I
sir, I believe it's pronounced English.
See,
God.
told you.
The
Don't draw crowd.
here's why I love the movie, and I'll move on real quick after this. But the first two acts of this movie do a great job establishing these characters. It's a character piece. It goes into each one of their cases, why they're there, what forces them to go forward, why they're together, and just what makes them want to do this. And it's through a variety of reasons. Some are money, some are power, some are through the sheer force of their beliefs. Now the third act is a marvelous piece of work. It is a 45-minute long fight scene.
Yep.
It's builds up to this, and it is 45 minutes long of these people.
I didn't realize it was 45 minutes.
45 minutes of just nonstop fighting of these 13 assassins or 13 warriors fighting this feudal lord's army. And it goes on nonstop, and you see what happens to each one of them. And then the finale is just beautiful.
I haven't seen it in a long time, Jay.
God,
I haven't seen it since I saw it with you.
Yeah,
It's been well over a decade ago.
Yeah, it's over a decade at this point. I saw it several years ago because I wanted to go back and rewatch it, and I was in love with it as much as I was the first time.
Is that streaming anywhere?
I don't think it is, which is another travesty. Look it up and let me know. And the other reason, and again, mentioning the fight choreography in this is just truly astonishing. And honestly, it makes me want to watch it. It made me want to go back and look at more Takashi Miike's films. I knew some of them. I believe me and Joe watched a few of them together. But
Audition.
Yeah. Oh God. Watch 13 Assassins.
It's on Hulu.
Be in a really special mood to watch Audition.
It's on Hulu.
Okay, I don't have Hulu, so I'll have to find some.
I'll have to buy premium. I don't know. I didn't know that there was that many different levels of freaking Hulu.
Yeah. Joe, what's your third pick?
Oh shit, this is tough. Oh my god.
It really was.
This is so tough. Because there's two or three things, so we can do honorable mention. So I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I'm glad I threw Homeward Bound in the middle of it, because I think the third one is going to be right up more of my alley. It is Cronenberg's The Fly.
It was on my list too.
I love Vincent Price, but there is no comparison. That first movie holds up. It's great. I enjoy it. I can still watch it. Still quotable as hell. Help me, help me. Still has some beautiful scenes in it.
You did it wrong.
What?
Help me. Help me. Help me.
I can't do that voice. But now, Cronenberg's actually makes slightly less sense. And here I'll tell you why. Because he mutates, and there doesn't really explain why. But visually, for the story and progression, it makes more sense.
It's Kafka-esque.
Yeah.
It really is.
Right. Is the metamorphosis complete? Sorry, I was trying to remember Chuck Pogue's name, motherfucker, and then you screamed out Kafka-esque as I was in the middle of my whilst I soliloquize. Anyway, So I love
Ditto.
I love the original. It makes sense that he transports in the original. And if I don't think I should sit here and explain either version of this to people, you guys, that seems like a waste of time.
No, it's. I mean, the technology aspect is secondary to everything else, right?
It's secondary to everything else. But in the first one, he transports and gets flying. He's already there, which actually makes a little bit more logical sense if you guys think about it to me. Then he would just start to metamorphose if he starts to go straight Kafka.
Yeah.
But visually that works, and it's written by Kentucky's own Charles Edward Pogue. That's not the reason I put it on the list. We'd love to have Chuck Pogue on the show. And as of late, I don't know, that restraining order doesn't. I mean, does that have anything to say about him doing it with Zoom?
I don't know how. I am not. I
don't know how restraining orders work with Zoom.
I'm not an attorney. I just pose as one in magazines.
Right. So. I don't know, guys. What do you think? James, you are the huge, we all love Vincent Price, but I'll give you the one who you above and beyond the other two. I think The Fly is a better film. It stars Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis, and it has a brutal ending.
Yeah. Oh man, that poor guy.
And that's the other thing, Chad. Nobody in that movie deserves what they get.
No.
Nobody was, he's playing God in a sense, but he's not playing, he's a researcher who makes a mistake.
James, I want you to answer the question, but that ending with the gentleman, I watched it as a kid and I was honestly revolted and sad because I'm like, that's one of those few movies where I just thought about a fictional character after the fact. I'm like, he's not going to be right.
He's not right. He's in a little bit of the first of the sequel. No one deserves what they get. And it has one of the most heartbreaking creature deaths in cinema history. It's right up there with me with King Kong. When he pulls that shotgun barrel to his head, begging Gina Davis, who is pregnant with his child, to blow his brains out. You go back and watch that. It is, I'm getting a little, I'm not getting sad. I'm not going to start crying, but it's sad for me to think about it now.
Yeah.
It's
honestly, we would have called this we would have called this Cronenberg's masterpiece, but then he had to go make History of Violence, the bastard.
Yeah, I think History of Violence probably is his masterpiece. I love that movie too, but it does not have
Dead Zone.
Have you ever read the book? It's a pretty good adaptation of the book, but as hard as they go, as hard as he tries, Christy and I both agree, he still doesn't get the sorrow and just the shit piled onto that character that Stephen King did.
Oh, no.
Doesn't get to do it. The book takes longer, but you don't. Oh my God. Johnny, what's his name? Johnny. I can't remember Johnny's last name.
Johnny Five.
It's not Johnny.
I mean, it's a real common
something
name.
like that. Yeah.
I do remember.
He is such a miserable bastard. And that's another character where he deserves nothing that he gets.
No. And I think that's it. I think that's why, and that's why I didn't bring it up just because of Cronenberg. But I think that's one of the things that I love the original Fly, but it's for a different reason. Because the original Fly with Vincent Price is about the creature, but not. Yeah. It's about the ramifications all around the creature. These people trying to find it, solve this mystery, do all this. What does it mean for the family? That is not Cronenberg's The Fly. So it really does depend on what you want to see. So to me, they're very different films. Yes, it's a remake, but for lack of a better term, the gestalt of those two films are completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said,
in all versions of it, nobody really gets what they deserve. It's the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah, absolutely, Jen. The only thing is that Cronenberg takes it up another 20 levels, and everyone in that movie suffers. Everyone in that movie suffers, and there's no villains.
No,
there are no villains in Cronenberg's The Fly. There are just people who, I mean, he becomes a monster, but he's not a villain. And that's also pitch perfectly cast. That's Gina Davis and Jeff Goldblum's maybe two of their best performances of all time.
Yeah, and let's not talk about Joe's love of Cutthroat Island. I just can't handle it tonight.
No, I don't think I've ever actually seen all of Cutthroat Island. I've only seen.
You know what? I watched it not too long ago, and I say not too long, probably about 8 years ago, and I'm like, it is not as bad as everybody made it sound.
James, a month ago, and yes, it is.
No. I would
Wouldn't she wake up
argue.
in with bed with some man and then jump on a horse and ride across the beach? Is that how that movie opens up? Or is that what I was dreaming?
Basically,
I woke up
no.
in bed with a man.
Basically that's how it ends up. Yeah,
I would
basically
argue. When did that movie come out?
1996.
Because it bankrupted everybody.
97. Yeah, it
was
lost like
gonna say,
$115 million.
I think if you look at, it's probably one of the best pirate movies of the 90s.
Oh, God.
I'm being honest.
Because there were so many of them.
That's my point. They took a chance. They made a mistake, but it's probably the best pirate movie in the 90s. If you disagree, please go on Twitter. Let us know what pirate movie.
And tell Carolco, I can never say the name correctly, that did T2 and Cutthroat Island, and Cutthroat Island sunk them, right? That's the last big movie.
Yeah,
I think
they
so.
did.
That's the one that painful.
I watched an interview with James Cameron the other day, just when I was listening to it when I was working. There's one I'd never heard, and they were talking about how he didn't make any money off Titanic. And he said, "Well, you had all that Terminator 2 money." And he goes, "Well, turns out, yeah, I do okay, but it turns out I often do movies and do huge movies for production companies that end up going under, and I don't get paid."
There's an entire dialogue going on about that same phenomenon for authors in the case of one Alan Dean Foster and a company called Disney. That's probably for another episode.
Yeah.
Back on the Fly.
Have you seen it? That's
good movie. Good movie. Good movie.
I'm telling you, that it was so hard to come up with that third one. It was a pain in the ass, but once again, that cinema, him pulling that, to me, that cinema, him pulling that shotgun and putting it into his head and begging her to pull the trigger, and she's in love with him.
Oh, again, other than John Getz losing his limbs, it also has one of those scenes that still makes me crawl when he loses his teeth.
Yeah, you have a teeth thing.
I have a teeth thing. Oh God, I can't handle it, and it's still, like even thinking about that scene makes me want to retch right now. So, James, what's your second pick? What's your last pick?
Speaking of retch,
I'm really struggling because I've got about 5 more, but I'm going to go with this one because I think it is important. And again, I'm going to be the nerd and go the history route on why this one's important as a remake. And I'm going to start, as I always try to do, giving some credit to the author. This is based on a story by a Charles Belden. Charles Belden was born in 1904 and dropped dead at 1954 in the Hollywood Hospital, the celebrity hospital. Died at 50. He wrote a lot of films. He wrote some of the Charlie Chan films, some of the very successful Charlie Chan films. He wrote some of the Mr. Moto films. And if you're into old films, you know those were pretty big deals. But he also tried to write short stories and novels and things like that. And he wrote an unsold short story called Waxworks. Waxworks didn't sell, but
I know what you're going to do.
He optioned it to some movie studios. But he had also wrote a short story that wasn't the same plot called The Wax Museum. Well, it turns out Warner Brothers thought they owned one, but they owned the other, and ended up having to pay him $1,000 extra to get the rights to the other one.
Good for him.
So that's if I learned anything from Charles Belden, and this is all I learned from him, is call all your projects with names very close to one another, so they'll think they optioned one, but they actually optioned the other, and they'll have to pay you out for both. Now, this is important historically because, and I have the original script, not the original, I don't have an original copy, but I have a print of the original. It was lost forever. And then it was originally he wrote it, I said a short story. He wrote it as a stage play when it was Waxworks. It gets picked up. They decide we're going to make it into a movie. It's pre-code. They can have drug references in it. They can have all of that stuff because the Hays Code hasn't started yet. And they tap a director by the name of Michael Curtis, who would direct these films like Casablanca and Robin Hood and White Christmas, to make this film. But it also is one of the early films that used what was then called the two-color Technicolor system. Made in 1933 with Lionel Atwill and Fay Wray, right before she did this 8 movie. Uh,
That's
and
not inclusive.
I'm sorry.
I don't have anything funny to say. Just keep
Uh,
going. Giant gorilla, you say?
Fay Ray, and it was about this
Scrotum.
sculptor who
You say
made very,
scrotum?
very
I said scrotum.
phenomenal.
Scrotum?
I didn't have anything funny to say. Scrotum's funny.
That's
Scrotum?
not always. I mean, not if you follow it with certain words like tuck. That's not.
No, scrotal tuck is hilarious. You
You're
just
a
look at
sick
somebody
man.
who's not seeing it coming and you just go, scrotal tuck, and then walk away.
Sometimes the scrotal tuck doesn't see it coming.
Oh,
Anyway, Waxworks, Warner Brothers made it. They decide it's going to be one of the last films where they pioneer this early two-color Technicolor system, which they thought was lost. It was re-released in black and white forever because they couldn't find it. Evidently, in one of the Warner homes year in the 1960s, they found one of the color
It was
versions.
Dot's home.
Anyway, so you can now buy this, and it was
Fuck you,
preserved.
nerds.
It was preserved because it set the standard for one of the early Technicolor systems in 1933. That's pretty early for a color film. That being said, Fay Ray as well. Movie came out. Actually, it got horrible reviews for being in color. They were like, "It doesn't actually look that. That's not real color," and it's whatever. It went on its way, made a little bit of a splash, but nobody really cared. You jump forward 20 years. Now there is the code. They have to cut out all the drug references.
James, are you getting to the movie yet?
But they have an issue. So Waxworks was released as Mystery of the Wax Museum. They're looking for something to do. And I didn't know this. And I'm quoting the Library
Hurry
of
up
Congress.
and kill Paris Hilton.
I'm quoting the Library of Congress here. Did you know the history? And honestly, Joe and Chad, you all know more history of film probably than I do.
Probably
Do you
not.
know anything about why they rushed to do 3D films? I didn't know this. So the movies weren't getting attention anymore because of the Hays Code, or not Hays Code. By then, and television was coming out. Yeah. What could you offer in a movie?
That's the reason why you got CinemaScope and the rectangle instead of the square.
And the audio upgrades. Warner Audio, and then Disney did their own audio for Fantasia, but Warner did their own audio starting with this film as well. But they did it in 3D. It is not, as erroneously some people report, the first 3D film. That had the title of Bwana Devil, and it premiered in November of 1952. But everybody hated it. It was a critical flop, and the only reason people went to see it, the public wanted to see it in 3D. It was a big deal to see it in 3D. So Bwana Devil, the reason nobody talks about that is you only went to be like, that does look in 3D, and then you moved on. So what could they do? What did they have the rights to? What did they not have to argue about that they could turn quickly into a 3D film? Well, they went with the script they already had, a horror story by Charles Bedlin called The Waxworks that had already been made into the Mystery of the Wax Museum. However, they had natural vision now, and natural vision was a 3D that they created for this for Bwana Devil, and it was actually created, I found this interesting, by two out-of-work camera operators who were looking for any way back into the business. They needed jobs, and so they took it, and so they had to take out a lot of the drug references because it was now post-code. So they played up instead the mystery and the sex. Put some attractive women in there. You got Carolyn.
Is a mystery.
You got Carolyn Jones in there. You got Phyllis Kirk in there, and of course you got Vincent Price. I'm talking, of course, about House of Wax, the remake of Mystery at the Wax Museum.
Minute 15, he said the title.
So, but this film I think is a superior remake to the original. I'm not against Fay Ray.
That was 15 minutes at 22 hours.
If I wasn't interrupted. Now that being said, the funny part about it,
an interesting fact about this movie.
The funny part about there's several interesting facts about it. Do you know that it was because of this movie was the only time that Vincent Price actually met Bela Lugosi? Is because of this movie.
Yeah.
They hired Bela Lugosi to be at the LA premiere, and this is all true. Bela Lugosi showed up and was given a chimp or a monkey, an ape, something on a chain to hold at the front of the line. I don't know the logic behind this, but you look it up. You can find pictures. It's all true. Um, Vincent Price has kind of locked him in as a horror icon as well. So another reason this remake is really important if you're a fan of that time period. But more importantly, the director of this was only had one eye, so he couldn't experience 3D.
That was what I was going to talk about. Vincent Price, that would be the story he would tell for years and years. Is like, of course, the poor man never got to experience it because he only had one eye. That's who they hired to direct their 3D masterpiece.
Okay.
Andre de Toth, I believe was his name, right? Do you know what his response was, though? Time Magazine came out and just asked him before the movie premiered, why are you directing a 3D film when you can't see it? Do you know what his actual response was? And again, it's from the Library of Congress records, because this movie is now preserved. Beethoven couldn't hear music either, could he?
I got no argument.
Yeah, no argument.
No argument. Of
No.
course, you didn't have to put that 15-minute ping pong scene right in the middle of it like you did with your... I've got nothing funny. There is about a 5-minute
The
ping pong scene.
though, it is. It's not a ping pong. It's paddleball. It's to show off the 3D. It makes no sense in the rest of the movie, but you're absolutely right.
So quick question, James, before you go on. Have either one of you ever seen a movie in 3D with those red and green glasses? Because I never have.
The Kentucky Theater, which is hopefully temporarily closed. Hopefully will reopen. But they used to do every summer. At one point, they did a 3D pornography film, and I'm not going to go into details on that. But if you want to read the newspaper articles, check the archives, because they got rated for it. It's an entire history there. A couple of my friends were there when they got rated. That being said, they also would do classic sci-fi films, and I saw It Came from Space and a couple other old 1950s that were originally released in 3D, and it was before they modernized the Kentucky, when they still had the old reel-to-reel. So I got to see them as they originally were with the glasses.
Now, did the 3D actually work? Because, I always, when I was a kid, I had the red and green glasses for like books and other things, and I never saw the 3D. It never jumped out at me.
Yeah, it worked.
Yeah,
but it did not work. The problem is we are looking at things retroactively. Did it work as good as Avatar in 3D? Absolutely not. I mean, but did it look
give you
a little
headache?
bit more
I know
like
that probably for damn sure.
It worked okay.
I watched Freddy's Dead when it came out in 3D. The last third act of Freddy's Dead's in 3D. You can and on when you bought the special edition DVD, it came with the red and blue glasses like Chad.
I watched it for the Roseanne cameo.
That's also another movie that has a ridiculous. You need to go ahead and put these 3D glasses on. In the dream world, it makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Why the fuck does it make all the difference, Kodo? Why? I mean, you're getting a check right now.
I'm not making that. Roseanne does a cameo in that one, right?
Roseanne and Tom Arnold and
That's
Johnny Depp.
Yeah,
Johnny Depp's in it too.
By the way,
anyway, James, go ahead with your house.
I was just gonna say, did Toth?
And Freddy plays the Wicked Witch.
Did Toth would play would raise his stock immensely at Warner Brothers? Why would Warner Brothers like the Toth? Because they gave him about a month and a half to film, and they gave him, I think it was $750,000 to do the entire movie on. Production finished in 28 days, under time and under budget. He spent only $680,000. Jack Warner was so pleased that he sent a case of Jack Daniels to the Toth's resident, and work started immediately thereafter on their next 3D picture. Now, it made it to the screen as House of Wax. It premiered at the New York Paramount on April 10th, 1953. Nowhere near Halloween, nowhere near anything else. The cast attended opening night. The reason, again, this is so important, was the original House or Mystery at the Wax Museum used early Technicolor. This one used 3D. They were hoping, obviously, that it would make a profit. The New York engagement held for 40 days, and it grossed over $500,000 just in New York. 1 week later, they decided to open it up in LA, obviously. This is where, of course, they had Bela Lugosi show up with the ape for some reason. But when they did in LA, they did a interesting marketing technique. They showed it around the clock. They did midnight showings. They did all of that stuff. It made a ton of money. It cemented Vincent Price as a horror icon. Plus, and I have seen the original Mystery at the House or Mystery at the Wax Museum. It's a better made film. Does it have the annoying paddleball scene? Yes, Joe, it absolutely does. I agree with that. But you also have early Charles Bronson when he was still Charles Bukowski or whatever.
Yeah, but the original, if you buy the DVD, the special edition DVD, the normal.
James, that would be Charles Bukaki.
Speaking of scrotum, Bukaki. But they usually most of the special edition, well, at least mine has the original house.
Mystery at the Wax Museum.
Mystery at the Wax Museum. Sorry.
Yep. It was a huge success. It was the second highest grossing film of that entire year, beat only by The Robe. And it was reissued again in 1972 and 1981 as a remake. It is historically significant, not only because of 3D, but also because it did cement Vincent Price as a horror icon in some ways, which if you go forward to the 1960s and his interactions with a certain Mr. Corman, obviously that's historically significant. I could not talk about House of Wax. And they said they were going to remake it another time, but I'm not going to acknowledge that exists because...
oh, James, come on.
No.
They killed Paris Hilton.
Yeah, so are barbiturates. I don't have anything to back that up. I'm sorry, Paris.
It's not it's not a good movie.
No, there's been worse remakes.
It should never have been called. It's like, yeah, there's like several other remakes. If they just weren't called what they were called, you would have been, oh, that's a fairly shitty, enjoyable.
You know what they should have called that
movie?
You know what they should have called it? Seriously, they should have went back to his original title. Call that Waxworks or call it, the Wax.
No, Zach Galligan wouldn't let him.
Oh well, that's true.
That's a joke for Chad.
Yeah. Call it Wax-Based Dummies. I'd watch that movie.
Wax-Based Dummies. All right, who's next?
So James actually gave me a good leadway.
There's no way he gave you a good leeway.
By the way, no,
if you were trying to jump the Grand Canyon, that wouldn't have been a good lead.
I've indirectly shoehorned because you brought up The Fly, Vincent Price in the two movies, and I had no plans.
And he also somehow or another got his favorite author in here today, J.K. Rowling.
So it is a nice transition because I'm going to take and guys, you're going to rip on me, but I'm going to do it. But so what do you do with a movie that is a not very well known but still has some classic sci-fi horror / comedy film? You turn it into a musical.
Hello, my baby. Hello,
that was
my
on
darling.
Several lists too. I know what you're going to say. And that was on a few lists too.
Yeah, and if you watched our musical episode, I talked about it ad nauseum in there. But when we're talking about remakes, I have to talk about Little Shop of Horror.
Yeah, it's a superior movie.
Oh, I thought you were going to do the Planet of the Apes musical.
No.
Go,
Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas.
Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas.
Oh,
Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas.
Sorry.
Dr. Zayas, Dr. Zayas.
Dr. Zayas. I mean, I could have went that way. I made up my own lyrics.
Yeah. 1960, directed by the original was directed by Roger Corman. It was starred Jonathan Hayes, Jackie Joseph, and Mel Wells with a brief cameo by Jack Nicholson.
Never heard of him.
It was kind of a joke film. It was just Roger Corman's way of making a buck. He used a bunch of old sets. He had sets already made for another movie, so he shot this in a weekend, guys. Is that right?
Yeah. During night weekends, whenever.
During night and weekends, it was the joke movie that they could do in 48 hours.
Yeah, and
it was a bet. It was a bet.
And he made some money off of it, and then some people came along and made it an off-Broadway musical. And then come 1980s.
That would have been the early 80s. It's oh God, it's a fantastic. I'm sorry, Chad, I don't mean to stop you.
No, go ahead.
But it was an off-Broadway musical that became really popular. And the guy that wrote the music is the one who went on to do the music for Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Howard. It's a fantastic documentary that I wanted to talk about as far as stuff I liked in 2020, and we didn't get to it.
Can we point out that this is the second time James has left?
While you were talking, yes.
While I was talking, I have sit through 15 hours of building up before we even heard House of Wax.
I love him, but shit, he could have done that shorter.
Yeah, oh yeah, he could have done that a whole lot shorter.
I talked all my shit on the thing, and I didn't even get close.
Yeah. And we said the title right at the beginning. He
I was
had
like,
to
yeah,
make
we're gonna
us
talk about
sit.
the thing. Yeah, I know. He does it every time. Let me tell you about Darshul Hamlet. Blah, 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 which he
And
has.
no, we're not going to talk about Little Shop of Horror. No, we're going to bitch
Have you
about
seen
James.
the documentary I'm talking about?
No, I have not actually. I'm
Oh,
not-
dude, you got to watch it. So while you're talking, I'm going to look up his name so our audience will know.
Okay. So yeah, the 1986, Frank Oz took this off-Broadway musical and turned it into a feature-length film, starring Rick Moranis, the amazing Ellen Green, who, if you can't listen to Suddenly Seymour and get chills when she belts those lyrics, there's something wrong with you. Vincent Gardenia, and then of course cameos by Steve Martin, Bill Murray. The list goes on. Actually, I think it stops there. But
It
you
does
know,
stop. It kind of
yeah.
stops there.
But oh, he's back.
And he has the
What I missed?
combination to the air shield.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You're a dick. That's what you missed.
What? What? Did y'all bring up that Little Shop of Horrors had its own cartoon series?
No,
And
I actually was going to briefly
All
mention
right,
that.
real quick, boys. I wanted to
Yeah.
talk about this and the shit I loved in 2020, and I didn't get to. It's the documentary is called Howard. It's about Howard Ashman. Howard Ashman wrote a lot of those lyrics. He went on to do the music, and he died of HIV too early. But
Yeah.
Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin. I don't actually think he ever actually saw Aladdin. So all those songs that you love from that brilliant time of Waking Sleeping Beauty is
Yeah.
Howard Ashman, and he came, Chad, from Little Shop of Horrors. That was actually, he couldn't get any of his shit, so he built his own off-Broadway house, and
That's
Little Shop
awesome.
of Horrors was one. Yeah, it's a fantastic documentary called Howard on Disney Plus.
I need to watch it then, because if they talk more about like how he was inspired to take this Roger Corman, less known,
talk a little bit
lays again.
Yeah, well, they talk a little bit about it, not as much as you want, but you've got to check that out. But keep going.
Yeah.
Suddenly see more.
No, and you know the other thing that they did with the remake that they didn't do with the original, they made Audrey 2 talk, and it's voiced by the amazing Levi Stubbs.
Audrey 2 talks a little bit in the original.
Does she?
Yeah, feed me.
I don't remember her saying "feed me."
Audrey 2 talks in the original.
And
right?
and I will say the puppet far surpasses the original.
Oh, you've got to be shitting me.
But no,
fun movie.
but yeah, no. James, what are you doing?
He don't know.
His
I'm being a
microphone's.
puppet.
Oh, okay. But no, if you
Thank you,
Meat
James.
puppet.
if you're listening to us, I'm sure you have seen
Then you really should just stop.
Little Shop of Horrors. I actually showed it to my wife, and she actually really enjoyed it. I was kind of shocked that she would enjoy it. Now,
Really, I'm a little shocked by that one too.
yeah. Then now I want to briefly talk about how I'm disappointed. So I was like, you can't mess with
can't fix
the
your
Frank
penis
Oz
on
original. In 2020, it was announced that they are now making a remake of
The remake.
the remake. This one's being directed by Greg I Will Fuck Up Anything DC Berlanti.
I don't know who that is.
He produces a lot of the DC TV shows, so Arrow and
Oh, okay.
My kids love those things, and
I'll
I've
give
seen
him-
worse.
the only Berlanti thing I can give him a pass on is that he produced the Doom Patrol. But instead of Rick Moranis, we are getting Taron Egerton, which I'm okay with, sorta, but it's still not the Weasley nerd that is Rick Moranis.
I wonder if it'll be better than the House of Wax remake. See,
But
it brought
he-
it back to me.
But he can belt a tune, so I'll give him that. Instead of Ellen Green, we're getting Scarlett Johansson. And Levi Stubbs is being replaced, which honestly I am okay with this too, because I couldn't think of a better replacement for Audrey 2, Billy Porter.
Billy.
Now what? He's an American Horror Story. You know him from American Horror Story.
Okay. All right.
But the one thing that I will not abide by, cannot, even though I love him as an actor, he is very ranged. I cannot abide by Steve Martin's replacement being Chris Evans.
Yeah, because no, not the same.
Not the same. So
It's
I'm
the
not.
same.
I will probably see the Little Shop of Horror remake, but I will not be happy. So yeah, no. If you want to talk about remakes, I hold
one's
Little Shop.
tough.
I showed Little Shop of Horror right up there with The Thing and True Grit. it's just flawless in my opinion. So that's what I'm closing on, Little Shop of Horrors.
All right, so let's do some honorable mentions. I tell you, there's so many of them, but man, the
Yeah.
Philip Kaufman's '78 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
The reason I put shit, Chad, the Fog remake is a shit turd. It's worse than the original. The reason I didn't put it on there is because I just love Don Siegel's original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But once again, it's kind of two different movies. It's the same kind of premise. That story has worked several different times with several different settings. But
What do you think about Invasion with Nicole Kidman?
that one doesn't work.
I didn't care for it.
That's the one that doesn't work. But the other one that's the slow one that no one remembers is that's directed by the guy that directed Miss 45. I can never remember his name. Is okay. Anyway, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, it's more horrific than the original, and it has that haunting ending. Whereas the original, they made Don Siegel put that thing with Mike. Why can't I remember that fucker's name? He's one of the great character actors, Mike Chad.
Lundell. Mike Lundell. He makes pillows.
If you hadn't said it,
If I hadn't said it, you just rattled it off. It's like, yeah, he's in all of Joe Dante's films. Haven't you ever seen Inner Space? He's the villain.
I'm blanking.
Yeah.
I'll look him
You're
up.
not talking about Kevin McCarthy, are you?
Kevin McCarthy's who I wanted to say. Kevin McCarthy has a great. Well, they made Don Siegel put that.
Said Mike, and I was like, "Is Mike friends with Kevin?"
Kevin McCarthy. They made him, him screaming, "It's coming for you! It's coming for you!" at the screen, and that's where the movie was supposed to end, which would have made one of the best endings of all time. Problem is, they made him put that ham-handed thing at the end of him explaining it to everybody, and then them figuring it out. That's what killed. That's the one little thing that makes that movie. If it just ended there,
By the way,
Philip Kaufman version ends with Donald Sutherland screaming, and he's yeah.
By the way, I want to say because you mentioned Kevin McCarthy and Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the best part, absolute best part. Nobody needs to argue with me about Looney Tunes back in action. Is Kevin McCarthy's cameo when they go to Area 51 and he's walking by and he's holding one of the things and shaking, and that it's just.
He's in black and white too.
Yeah. If you don't get the joke, you don't get the joke.
You don't know Joe Dante.
Yeah. But every time I showed that to my kids a while back and they were like, "Oh, it's funny." And I'm like, "No, that's hilarious." Like they obviously didn't get that, but I was like, "Oh, that is why that movie should exist." And why we should keep that in print.
Here's another one that came out in the 80s that was done by what some people consider an auteur. And then I could do 20 more, but these are the only two I'm going to do. Scarface, De Palma Scarface.
Yeah.
It's it's almost 3 hours, but if you've ever watched the original, it's fun. I think that the original Scarface was produced by The Aviator. I can't remember his name.
Oh, Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes, yes.
But it's not as impactful as Tony Montana. And that was a movie that was, it was much maligned for its time. And by the way, it is still graphic as fuck.
Huh.
Right now.
Yeah, it is.
2021, it is still graphic as fuck. It is just crazy. But Scarface is a better film. All right.
James, what do you got?
I've got a couple, or quite a few actually, but I want to talk about one I'm going to spend a minute on because I think it's relevant, and I want to make sure people know about this because I know we've all watched it, I think, but I want to make sure people know. I want to talk a little bit about the fine classic work, what he's most known for before his tragic stunt-based accident death. H.B. Halicki, went by Toby, Gone in 60 Seconds.
Oh,
now why
I prefer the original.
Really? Because it doesn't have a plot.
I don't care. They're really doing actual car crashes.
Which, by the way, did I mention H.B. Halicki was doing? He was actually.
Yeah, but the balls it took to do
no.
that finishing because I got on a kicker after we watched it. I bought those movies are sitting over there.
If you watch the original one,
Mary Crazy Larry.
I went back and looked at this because there's parts of the movie, even on DVD when they cleaned it up and everything, where the audio is really low. You got to crank up your TV because, and as I did more research about it, I found out literally he didn't have a script. He wrote down main dialogue points and then they just would do them. That movie exists for a 40-minute car chase at the end. It is the longest direct car chase. Matter of fact, one of my favorite stories about it, and you could watch documentaries about it. One of the versions of Eleanor did get totaled with him in it. He plays the main guy, didn't produce it, all that stuff. Matter of fact, the production company that released it and distributed it, it was, quote, distributed by HB Halicki Junkyard and Mercantile Company. It just went to, they just took it to, drive-ins. But he got hit. A fellow stunt driver, missed his mark and rammed him in one of the Eleanor cars and wrapped him around a tree. He had to be rushed to the hospital. He wasn't conscious. And the story goes, and it's been vouched by several people, the first thing he said when he opened his eyes, did we at least get coverage? So, but the reason I say the remake is better is for a couple different reasons. A, it preserved H.B. Halicki's name. His widow is the one that sold it to Disney, which released it under Touchstone, made the film. Sadly, I don't know how many people would remember Gone in 60 Seconds, the original, if it didn't get remade. That's why it's an honorable mention. It's not a main one, but the remake does actually have a much more detailed plot, though it does have, to Joe's point, a lot less actual car chases and crashes. A couple other honorable mentions that I wanted to bring up, and I mentioned this, I almost was one of my main one. Hitchcock remade himself with The Man Who Knew Too Much. His original version in 1934, his remake in 1956. I wanted to bring it up because there is a book-length interview, Hitchcock and Truffaut. And Truffaut says to him in the interview that he likes the remake better than he does the original. And Hitchcock's response, I love it just for his response. Let's say the first version is the work of a talented amateur, and the second was made by a professional. Little line there. Carolyn Jones, by the way, is in the remake as well. And I just want to point that out because she's also in House of Wax. And then a couple other ones I want to mention, because I think it's important that we do acknowledge that America does have a tendency to remake international films for American audiences. So I want to throw out a couple of those. 3 Men and a Baby is a remake of a French film. So is Dinner for Schmucks. So is The Birdcage. So is The Upside. All of those are remakes of French films. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels is a remake of Bedtime Stories, which starred Marlon Brando and David Niven. And you can guess who played what role in each of those.
Right.
Of course, A Fistful of Dollars, when it was being filmed, they ended up having to settle with Yojimbo. It's a remake. And Chad, this is for you. Major Pain is a remake of the Charlton Heston film, The Private War of Major Benson.
Are you serious?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No, Major Pain with Damon Wayans is a remake.
Yes. It's credited in the things. Look it up. The original authors were, they wrote it at Charlton Heston's film before.
I would like to revise my list. Can we redo this
show? I gave you two that you didn't know, Man on Fire and Major Pain. There you go. The last thing I do want to say is there are also movies that are remakes that are released and not credited as remakes. One of them, and I have to say this because the original was Lampoon on Mystery Science Theater 3000. And then when the quote unquote remake that didn't acknowledge the original got sued, everybody went, whoa. And that's The Island, released in 2005, was sued and it held for copyright infringement on a 1979 film, Parts, The Clonus Horror, which was the exact same plot. An island where it turns out people are clones. They're there only to be harvested for organs.
So not only was it a shitty Michael Bay film, it was also another shitty movie before that.
That was Lampoon on Mystery Science 3000. So I wanted, before we closed this thing, I wanted my honorable mentions to deal with the fact that remakes can preserve a history that might be lost. In the case of H.B. Halicki, remakes also often harvest international topics or international films such as French, German, Russian, all of that stuff. Let the Right One In became Let Me In. All those are remakes. And then also that remakes sometimes are, we stole this idea and wanted to see if we could get away with it. There you go. I just wanted to say that is my honorable list and throw out some of the other ones. And yes, Major Pain. Go ahead, Joe.
So James stole all mine. I was going to mention the birdcage, but I did the one that didn't get mentioned, and honestly, it shows up in a lot of. I think it shows up on a lot of lists as one of the worst remakes. I disagree. I'm going to the Cohen brothers well again and talking about the Lady Killers. That's my honorable mention. I really
They're two different
It's
movies.
It's a different film.
They're kind of two different movies.
It's a different
Yeah,
film.
the lady. I don't know why that would be considered a. The problem is that the Lady Killers doesn't have Alec Guinness. The original
Right.
one had Alec.
But,
It's just a different movie.
yeah, I
And
love
actually,
Tom Hanks in that movie.
I agree. I agree. That's one of Tom Hanks' best performances. Fuck anybody that doesn't like that movie.
Yeah, he plays such a slime ball.
Yeah, it's good.
And then J.K. Simmons, irritable bowel syndrome.
Yeah.
You know,
Mountain Girl.
Mountain Girl.
yeah, Mountain Girl. I love Lady Killer. I don't know why it gets shit on. I really don't.
I use lines from it all the time. I have actually used it in class, not to flog an equine, if not yet deceased, on the verge thereof. But
yeah, so I wanted to mention Lady Killers, and this is not a remake. It's literally, and he freely admits that he stole the idea for his movie to make this. He stole this idea to make his movie. Throw Mama from a Train is kind of a remake of Strangers on a Train.
it acknowledges it, right? They're
So Danny DeVito
Crisscross.
freely admits that.
Crisscross.
Danny DeVito freely admits that he went to the theater to watch this to write his script. And because I felt bad about when we did favorite directors, I did not mention Danny DeVito as my favorite one of my favorite directors of all time.
So can I tell you a quick story about the Lady Killers? I had to look up Ryan Hurst's name. I couldn't remember. I had to interview Ryan Hurst.
Oh my God. Yeah, I remember. Okay, go ahead.
You know, were you there for Comic-Con when this happened?
No, this was the one. This was not the one.
Pre-Scarefest is at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
I said because he plays Lump in that movie, and it's not a big part, and clearly he doesn't have a ton of lines, and he's a good actor.
going to get that donut money.
Lump. I said, and you had the privilege of being in one of the great movie Coen Brothers films. He goes, I wouldn't call it one of the great ones, and he's in it.
Yeah.
I said, really? He goes, you recall it on the ground? I'd have to look it up, the conversation, but I remember he's like, I wouldn't call it one of their great ones. And
I'd call any Coen Brothers film a great film, so she can
and a
bite my
Coen
ass.
Brothers film. Instead of just saying, "Oh, thank you, I had X, Y, and Z experience," he just shit on it.
Yeah,
I like that.
But
By the way,
love the Lady Killers. I will watch it any day of the week and be enjoyed by and find it entertaining. So,
Chad, I'm glad you brought up the Lady Killers because that actually, for some reason,
and you
that
actually
made me-
sit down and stayed for it too. So, congratulations on that one.
Well, you
I
were
have-
talking about something he was interested in.
I have J.K.
that's true.
Simmons syndrome. I'm actually in a battle with Spider-Man. Anyway, what I was going to say is, another one that some people love that I wanted to bring up, just see what you all thought, because it's not one of my favorite remakes. Because I think it much like Lady Killers, it's a different type of film, and the remake becomes an action film. Is The Italian Job? I think Michael Caine's is different.
I didn't care for it. I
didn't care
think
for
I've
it.
only I've never seen the original all the way through. I've only seen scenes.
And I've
It has
never
one of the
never
most
seen the remake
quotable
all the way
lines in
through.
it.
I've never seen the remake all the way through. I could care less about them. I don't.
And there's a few others too to talk about that have been made, and what I'd like to do an episode later of, and James bring up Harlan Ellison again, of stories that work on almost every kind of setting.
Mhm.
So one of those would be Seven Samurai.
Oh yeah.
No matter if it's in space, no matter if it's the Magnificent Seven, no matter that story works. No matter what. Chad, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, good God, we could do a whole episode on the
Whether
Seven
it's a Bug's
Samurai.
Life, that story works in so many different.
Well, and that's, I mean, I
Stories.
think if you read, and Joe mentioned Harlan, that I can bring up, Harlan Ellison wrote Seven Against Chaos. And I think I can't quote it directly, but I think in his intro, he says something, and if I'm not direct, if it's not absolutely correct, it's awfully close. He said, the story's been done so much, isn't it about my turn? And he sets it in space, and there's all these worlds at war, and the end is coming, and chaos, the end of the universe is coming, and they have to find 7 people that can stop it.
Another one of those is A Star Is Born.
Yeah.
And I really liked the last one. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Gaga and the whole 9 yards. It's a lot of fun.
The one we all three got to agree, we got to talk about real quick. We've talked about it on every episode. Airplane.
Yeah, in a sense of
It's the exact same story.
It's the exact same. They had to buy the producer already owned the movie.
Yeah. So we're Airplane is technically a remake of 0 Hour.
Yep.
So
it's the comedic version. That's it.
By the way, I mentioned the Italian Job earlier, and I didn't know if y'all knew. You know, Italian Job's place in history as far as its claim to fame in an international survey.
No.
The line "You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off" by Michael Caine was voted favorite film one-liner in a 2003 poll. If you watch the full movie, you know what that line is from, and it's a response to Benny Hill.
I just don't care for the remake. I don't know.
But I'll be honest. I bought the original because it's Michael Caine, and the original is a different type of film. Like both of them are. I think my problem with the remake is it's too convenient. I don't know. That doesn't really make sense, but it's too glossy. There's something about the Michael Caine version where they're all.
Yeah.
When you got to work with Benny Hill, you're going to have complications.
I'll tell you exactly what it is. One of them has Michael Caine and the other one has Marky Mark.
You know, I'm not anti Mark Wahlberg. I love him talking to plastic planes.
Mark Wahlberg is great in Ted and
Boogie Nights.
But I don't even know if I really. I think
he's not really.
I think a lot of people could have played that role. I know.
Yeah.
I know. Go ahead and come after me, people, and start screaming at me. I think a lot of people could have played that.
I mean, I don't think Dustin Diamond could do it. There's exceptions.
I don't know.
But you're right. There are a lot. Well, maybe he should have been given a chance. I don't know. Maybe that needs to be an episode in the future time. What roles do you think almost anybody with acting talent could play? That could actually be an episode in something.
So let's end the show, and I'm going to say the best remake of all time, and Joe is going to agree with me hands down. He's going to go fuck The Thing, fuck The Fly.
By the way,
go.
The Alfie remake is better than the Italian Job remake.
All right, and Joe's going to go fuck Alfie.
What's it all about?
About switching channels is the best remake of His Girl Friday.
Which is basic.
Good night, Bonehead.
Which is what is the other? What's the other version of that? That movie, that story's been told 10 times.
Yeah, but switching channels did it just right.
Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon did a version of what's it called?
The Front Page.
The Front Page. It's either called The Front Page, His Girl Friday, Switching Channels. That's another story that works every single in Switching Channels cases extremely well.
All right, let's actually close this. I've got one question to close this on. If you could pick one obscure movie to remake and pick any cast.
Oh, I'm glad you're telling me.
What you can do any cast, anybody, as long as they're alive. We can't, to quote Robin Williams as a genie, can't bring people back from the dead.
Trying to shut down the show, you ask a 42-minute answer.
No,
so
I
Joe,
know.
You
what
think
would
about
you
it. So
remake? I literally had one pop into my head that I'd like to do.
No, seriously.
Again.
Well, then you both go.
This has been an ongoing gag for me because it's true. I would do it just to see if I could. If I was a successful filmmaker.
Did the original person was his name Ed?
Yeah. I really did, and Joe probably remembers me telling. I would want to do a remake of Plan 9 from Outer Space, and I want the slogan to be, "It can't be any worse."
I think Bonehead could get away with that. By the way, I don't know that I would have 10 years ago wouldn't have been as interested in it, other than to check. But now I think
I would love to remake it. Seriously, if you're going to remake a movie, it has to be a movie. I know, in my opinion, has to be a movie that's shit. Plan 9 from Outer Space. It can't be any worse.
By the way, Bill Corbett, just shout out to Bill Corbett. He's never going to see this, but Bill Corbett has an entire song about plans 1 through 8 that they played when they riffed it on riff tracks.
You know, also Garbage Pail Kids, the movie. There you go. Those are my two.
That also couldn't be any worse.
You know, the film that popped in my head, and I haven't seen it in years, but I'm like, we could find somebody to remake it. We could get some actors that have that history to remake it. Tough Guys. Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas were in the original.
Oh my
Yeah, you
god.
could do that. You could do
Who? I mean, there's got to be. I was trying to think. I don't know who I'd cast because I
Clint
want
Eastwood and
old.
Tommy Lee Jones.
Oh my God! There we go. Tough guys without because they've been together, much like Lancaster and Douglas were. They did
Or
Space
Gene
Cowboys
Before,
and
yeah. Or you
or-
bring Gene Hackman out and you do two 90-year-olds. You do Gene Hackman and Clint Eastwood in Tough
By the
Guys.
way, if you've never seen Tough Guys, audience, I don't know where you're going to find it, but you could spend an evening in a worse way than watching Tough Guys.
When I was young, I always wanted to do my own version of the thing, but I really never got past how I wanted it to open. Other than that, I've never got the rest of it because you'd have to you want to change it.
Sorry, I just picture you in a basement going, title card.
There was a little bit more than that, but it wasn't damn much more. It wasn't much more than that. I don't know. I'm looking around the basement. I mean, I'm with Chad. There's a lot of stuff that's.
Well, that's why I said Tough Guys. Tough Guys, nobody.
I'll tell you one that okay. So you see behind me, Robbie the Robot, right? I introduced my son to
Planet.
Forbidden Planet over the break. He got into it. He liked the robot. Forbidden Planet, I know is considered a masterpiece. I loved it as a kid. I still like it, but it doesn't hold up story-wise as well as The Time Machine. And I think, by the way, The Time Machine is one of those that got a remake that's sad because it deserved better. I think Forbidden Planet is a movie that is dying to be remade.
As long as they don't, the day the Earth stood still, it.
Agreed. But
Yeah.
and I actually would like to change the plot of it. I want to keep the Krell. I want to keep out in space, and I want to remove the Tempest because it's Shakespeare's The Tempest, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yes,
Oh, Brave New World.
it took me a second to remember, but while we were watching it, I was breaking it all down and rearranging it in my head, and I was wanting to remove the kind of the love interest and just kind of do the Krell, what they find, how it go. That's a movie that's dying to be remade. I know James Cameron flirted with it in the 90s, but it never happened.
You're braver than I am because I literally picked Tough Guys because I'm like, there's no diehard Tough Guys fan that's going to come after me and say I ruined the gestalt of it.
What do you think about remaking Forbidden Planet? No? Yes?
What? No, sorry, I lost you for a second.
What do you think about remaking Forbidden Planet? It'd be easier
tough.
to do The Time Machine because you got the novel always to rely on.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Well,
I think
and this
Forbidden
is
Planet would be the challenge.
I kind of think the same thing about oh shoot, I'm blanking on the name of it, but it's
Logan's
the one that
Run.
Logan's Run is, oh god, that actually if I was willing to take a risk, if it wasn't Tough Guys, because Tough Guys is easy to remake. Oh yeah, Logan's Run would be one. And but again, you get the book to go back on. I mean, they changed stuff from the book, so you can go back.
I'd really like to blow up Forbidden Planet and just keep those things and the robot and just go from there and build world building. So I don't know that I'd have it be and that may be the reason why it's not been remade is because that the original has a lot of it's the Tempest.
Yeah.
So Jed, do you have one that's like a big budget one?
Oh, a big budget one? Oh man.
Like something like a science fiction film or a horror film or anything that's been that.
Well, see, my big problem with this is, like I said, if it's a movie that I loved, I don't want to remake it. I have no desire to go in and mess with it because I've never been a fan of remakes for the sake of remaking films.
The issue is
it has to be a movie that's somewhat flawed. Like I said, the original needed a lot of work. True Grit, yeah, it needed. Yeah,
I don't know. I disagree. I think the Thing original in that time didn't need. I think it's fine. I think they just went back and did something completely different. Like that's the issue with The Time Machine is the movie. I've read the book and the movie. I rewatched it a few months ago once again with my kid, and I actually think a lot of that shit holds up really well. The performances are what makes that movie just keep spinning. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So, Chad, what you're telling me is you want to do a shot-for-shot remake of Psycho, but not the original, the remake.
And it happened.
Good.
It happened. They stormed
my
the
entire thing
Capitol
about that-
and they did Psycho.
My entire thing about that, by the way, is I would have loved to have been in the pitch meeting for that. Like, what did they think was going to happen? Okay, we're going to shot-for-shot remake. Okay. And Now it's like we're just gonna do, but it's Gus Van Sant. Oh well, okay, sure.
Yeah, I know.
Boy, and that's I don't put that on Gus Van Sant. By the way, if somebody came up to you right now and said, "Hey, we're doing a shot-for-shot remake of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Here's a check, boys. I'll be on set Monday.
I know.
Film it."
And I'll be writing the tell-all book in about 2 years from now after that non-compete or non-disclosure thing.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
It only is going to be 3 pages long, and it's only going to be, I did it for money.
Tweet us out. I'm kind of curious if there's some remakes that you think we missed or that you think we were wrong about. Tweet us, Facebook us, find us anywhere you can. We haven't been deleted yet.